You likely consider yourself a fully formed adult, but in reality, you are likely running a survival script written in childhood, a set of obsolete reactions merely masquerading as an adult personality. This system error is rooted in toxic shame. It is a state of profound inner agony caused when a child's vulnerability is exposed before they have the psychological hardware to process it. To survive the weight of that exposure, your psyche was forced to construct a false self, a defensive social mask designed to navigate the world without getting hurt again. You can see this script running in the symptoms of your daily life: the chronic exhaustion of imposter syndrome, the rigidity of perfectionism, and the need to please everyone. The persona we recognize as an effective adult is often an exhaustive energy drain, a terrified child burning every available internal resource just to keep the protective facade from slipping. Evaluating the health of your psychological system requires a diagnostic framework. We can map your life through 3 external variables, or pressures. Variable P1 represents your personal obligations, the relational habits and social expectations you maintain primarily out of a fear of rejection. P2 tracks your professional constraints. These are the career metrics, status demands, and digital notifications that dictate your schedule. P3 is private dread. It is the repressed shadow elements and the chronic overthinking that prevents your mind from ever finding true rest. This creates a specific mathematical failure. When your total internal capacity, represented by the lowercase s, is lower than the combined force of these 3 pressures, your identity becomes passive. If the external load outweighs your internal authority, the pressures dictate the direction of your life. Maintenance of the false self consumes your processing power, leaving repressed emotions trapped. This creates a paralyzing friction, a stillness that feels like peace, but is stagnation. Without a deliberate inversion of this equation, the system eventually crashes under the sheer weight of its own unexpressed trauma. Transitioning to wholeness is not a matter of moral improvement. It is a matter of mechanical engineering. It requires the active integration of every part of the psyche you've spent your life hiding. The psychologist Carl Jung identified this process as individuation, the mandatory confrontation with the shadow. We are taught to fear emotions like rage, grief, and intense desire. But these aren't evil forces. They are potent, unchanneled fuel sources that the false self was simply too afraid to tap into. By burying this raw energy to maintain your social mask, you have effectively starved yourself of the very power needed to change your circumstances. Integration is the only path forward. You cannot power a sovereign operating system if you are terrified of your own battery. To harness that power, we use the Hermetic principle of mental gender, a specific mechanism for detaching your identity from your programming. This framework defines the me as the reactive persona. This is the feminine principle, the part of the mind that receives external ideas and acts out your social conditioning. The I is the masculine principle. This is the directing energy, the higher witness that remains unchanged regardless of what the me is feeling or doing. When you systematically detach that observing I from the conditioned me, the noise of your social programming suddenly drops away. In that silence, you can finally identify your true will. This isn't an ego craving for money or fame, but the specific, authentic action that flows naturally from your core once the filter of the false self is removed. By separating the observer from the observed, you stop seeking external validation and discover the fundamental purpose that has been there all along. Upgrading the system requires a tactical cognitive drill. It is called metanoia. Metanoia means to change your mind. It is the act of shifting your internal polarity to stop the reflexive, unconscious swings of your moods and your environment. This move takes the raw friction of your shadow and the crushing weight of external pressures and funnels them into directed, purposeful action. Metanoia is the mechanism that transitions you from a reactive pawn to an active mover within your own reality. This is the goal of functional adulthood, the sovereign self. Here, the capitalized S, your integrated identity, is finally larger than the pressures of your life. In this state, you regain internal authority. You no longer seek a static, impossible peace. Instead, you master your response to the inputs you once found overwhelming. This creates a structural synthesis. By uniting your conscious intent with the raw power of your shadow, you produce a result that is greater than the sum of its parts. You become a functional whole. Audit your boundaries. Refuse to live out of a childhood trauma response and become the autonomous architect of your life. Read the technical documentation at the URL on screen and execute the protocol.